say, then you can legally start it. I just made that up. It's not a law. My name is Mike Blinder. Welcome. I am the publisher of E&P Magazine. If you're new to our brand and our title, Wikipedia says we're the Bible of the newspaper industry since we go way back to 1884. But E&P stands for editor and publisher. The original title, we have so much more than that. We cover operations. We cover, of course, everything to do with AI now, everything to do with building audience, building revenue, and of course, maintaining journalism. When we publish our stories and we target our media across all our platforms, we look at our audience having three aspects, the three major bullets of who we target. Someone who must publish news, someone who has to find an audience for that news, someone who has to monetize that news. That's who we are at E&P. Before we get started, welcome to this Zoom webinar. You can't talk. No, what you're doing is you're part of an environment called Zoom where we've shut off your audio, and you can raise your hand, but don't do that because I still don't understand what that button at the bottom, raise your hand, is all about. What you have at the bottom of your screen is something called chat, and that is the environment we're going to keep an eye on during this entire journey together. The problem with Zoom, if I can be so bold, is Zoom defaults when you go into chat to panelists and host only. We don't want that because we want a dialogue in there. We want you to talk to your fellow participants, those in the audience, and us at the same time. Because if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you disagree with what's being said, you're allowed to speak out in chat. We're going to do our best to answer your questions in there. So you're going to swap that down, if you don't mind, to everyone. Even if you're saying thank you, even if you have a questions, make sure we can all see together what's going on. I want to test that now to make sure everybody can do that. So the big story here in the United States, at least, well, actually, it's around the world right now, is the price of energy. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, actually a town called Hendersonville. On your screen is the current gas prices here in Nashville, Tennessee. We go to Costco, so here's the current price in the town of Hendersonville we're at. I'd like anybody in chat right now to do it to everyone. Put up your city and what you paid per gallon for gas in your last fill up, so we can all share that and make sure you get defaulted now to talking to the whole group. With that being said, let's get to work. If you're running a news organization right now, you already know the reality we're all facing. The fight for sustainability in news publishing has become a fight for efficiency. Every department is under scrutiny: editorial, workflows, advertising, circulation, distribution, and yes, operation. Now, here's the tension. Print is still generating real revenue for many publishers, but the cost and complexity of producing those editions hasn't changed nearly as fast. It's the economics of the business world we all live in. So the real question becomes, how do we protect the value of print without letting the production process consume resources we simply can't afford anymore? Now, here's the problem. Today's conversation, some are scared of. We hear this everywhere. The whole idea of automation, those two crazy, incredible letters that everybody's buzzing about and arguing about, the AI. Some of us are worried about losing that editorial control. Some of us are scared of the change. Let's be honest. I've been in this industry now for over 2 decades, and it's always been that way. And maybe it's time we kind of wake up, because that's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss not theory, but actual real-world examples of producing real newspapers at real scale with real audiences and doing it more efficiently, faster, and with better economics. Our case study today, well, let me bring a guy from across the pound. No, across the pond. That's my little joke, Tim. I hope you don't mind. Pond. Never mind. Howard, Tim Robinson. I don't know how to describe you. I checked your background, and you have the chops, man. You're an operations guru. You have worked at some of the biggest titles in the UK. But today we're going to be discussing your world as you're now consulting other operations and how you have a real world example of applying automation. Do I have that correct, sir? You've gone through this change and you've done it?
Absolutely, yeah. This isn't theory, it's completely about practice. So what we're referring to here is a large regional group in the UK that's introduced print automation that I worked for. It's it's when I say a large group, it's a group with in excess of 130 print titles, some of which are really kind of big regional papers down to very small community uh, newspapers that serve their communities, obviously. And out of that number, we have produced around 75 titles who are now being automated every single week. When I say automated, that's every page of the paper being produced by ATEX automation processes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because when we were doing the prep for this and I was getting all the notes, those 75 titles, all those pages are being produced weekly. And correct me if I'm wrong, with a team of 6 people. Is that correct?
They're doing all of the production work, certainly, yes. So once upon a time, obviously, this is a really labor-intensive process. I'm sure everybody on the call will be familiar with that. The process of either designing pages by hand, using templates, or a mixture of those processes. We in the 75, we've replaced that entirely with an automated process. So there are a whole number of people creating content for those titles. They may be assigned to
Oh, of
one or
course.
many of those papers, but the actual
I'm
production
talking the
work is
operations here, the real
certainly
stitching it all
the,
together, which
the
was so
nuts and
labor
bolts of
intensive.
it.
Yeah,
Yes, is done with a core central team of just 6 people
amazing.
who
So
keep that
that's what this
ticking throughout
story
the
is
week.
really all about, and we're going to try to address all your questions, all your concerns. Which I'm going to go to Stuart now. Stuart Browley. Stuart, you are I checked your background. I don't want you to think you were being stalked, but I did go to LinkedIn and took a look. You have got you've been working in this crazy world of automation for almost 2 decades. Am I correct, sir? Is that your story?
Yeah, absolutely right, Mike. And thanks for the intro. I've worked with ATEX for a long time, and one thing's for sure, publishing never stands still. And right now, automation is the watchword. Everything on the print side of our product, and obviously ATEX have products for web and for digital and for advertising and circulation, but on the print side of our product range, everything is about automation. Um, and that's been a gradual sort of move forward for us, starting with years and years ago automatically placing adverts according to an ad plan, as opposed to manually doing it, and then building on that with templates and then full page designs, and then to where we are today, which is print automation, as Tim's described it. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but it resonates with everybody that we're talking to at the moment on the print side. They're all looking at that. They all want to achieve that for varying different reasons. And we have a product that is battle tested. It's live in production and it's producing those pages today. I love that phrase, battle tested. I picked that up in a call just this week. But I think that's an important message for us to put over in a webinar such as this. This is live and in production, and it's not something that's still in the lab.
All right, so let's now a good friend of ours and a good friend of mine, Chris Friedman. Chris, you're no stranger to E&P. You've helped us produce webinars like this in the past, and you've answered a lot of. We've actually interviewed you on this wacky world of operations and automation and all that and more. But give us a little bit more of your background, Chris, if you don't mind, because it goes beyond just ATEX. You've worked extensively in this industry, correct, sir?
Since 1996, I have been involved with media software technology. So, like you said, a few different companies over that time. And just to go back to what Stuart said, I mean, it's been a crazy ride, but something that when we talk about print automation that someone brought up to us on a demo was, oh, it kind of reminds us of when classifieds were first being flowed onto cork pages back
Right.
around that time, and now we're able to do the same with stories and images, and so yes.
All right, so let's get to work. Tim, let's start with the real world problem. Whenever we do these case studies, and that's what I love to do when we do these webinars. This is not, I mean, obviously ATEX is our sponsor. ATEX supports the mission here at E&P, and we appreciate that. But this is a case study. We really want to dive into it now so we can learn and dissect it, if I may. Tim, let's start with the real problem. You were running a large portfolio of titles, different formats, different frequencies, different markets. When you looked at that operation day to day, what was the pain point that told you you needed to make some change and move into this automation?
I think the pain point will be familiar to all publishers of all different sizes. It's around print being continuing to be a labor-intensive, resource-heavy process when you want to focus your efforts on growing your digital audience. Print audiences are declining, sadly, and there's very little we can do about that. But they still generate significant amounts of revenue, and we want, wherever possible, to extend the lifespan of our printed products for as long as possible, and to maintain relationship with our loyal readers. They may be diminishing in number, but they demand high quality. They're still expecting their printed products to be this kind of thing that's worth paying for. So it's the dichotomy of trying to get away from putting too much resource into that whilst maintaining the quality and the standards that people expect. And that's something has to give there. And we've been looking for that kind of answer for a very long time. We've tried all sorts of ways of moving towards it with templated processes and taking out some of the burden of production. Automation was the final kind of step in the process, really.
Yeah, but I've heard this before. I mean, again, I'm not challenging you, but the word template can actually scare people because every newsroom has experimented with templates. Every publisher has tried to standardize production, but templates alone don't suddenly let six people produce over, these thousands of pages. I mean, so what actually changed here? What made this fundamentally different from the old, quote, if I may say that, template approach that we've heard of for a while now?
Indeed, I think there's good and there's bad templates, obviously, but templates are just step one of the process. So they are an enabler in some ways of moving forward. If you start with templates, it's a quick jump to automation, but you don't have to start there. You can start wherever you like, because difference here is that the automated processes don't take content that has to be written or edited to fit boxes on a page and have to be exactly those lengths and exactly that kind of meticulous process of assembling. It's around creating content in a digital first way, which can then be repurposed. And the automation process allows for pages to fit that appropriately, fit those different length stories and those different types of pictures appropriately onto pages, dictated by the editor's design standards and the standards that publishers expect from their papers. But it's not the same process of literally writing into a box. It's writing content in one area, which is then repurposed. So print effectively becomes an efficient byproduct of the content creation process.
I'm going to stay, though, at 30,000 feet. I have worked, now I have one brand, thank God. It scares me when I look at some of these media companies, and some of them are picking up brands in so many different places that have different, I'll use the term flavors or whatever you want to, ethos. But one of the things editors, especially on the local, worry about is brand identity. If you're automating page assembly across dozens of titles in different communities, different styles, how do you preserve the visual identity for that editor in those local markets who cares so much about maintaining that heritage of what they're producing?
Well, that's really important. That's really important as publishers, but it's very important to readers that they recognize what's being presented to them as something that they recognize as a newspaper, as a quality product. And this kind of automation does give us that, because it's based on the typography, it's based on all of the kind of design rules that we had in the past. It's mimicking exactly those kind of parameters when it assembles a page. So the process is one that doesn't involve a human being pulling the page together. It's done by the machine, but the human part is concentrating firstly on the content itself, creating content that's absolutely right for the audience. That can be published digitally first. It can be used elsewhere. It's then repurposed into print. So an editor will basically spend around about a weekly editor will take half an hour assembling a list of the content that they've produced over the process of a week. giving it some priorities. So if they want some of those stories to be at the front of the book or on certain pages, they can do that. They then hand that over to a central team. In this case, the central team will then run the automation and check the process and check the outcome of the whole thing. And that process entirely takes around a half an hour for the selection of the content and a half an hour for the running and checking. So we're talking a newspaper being created in the space of an hour, in comfortably within the space of an hour as well. So that's quite an interesting difference to several people producing an entire paper over the process of a week. In many cases, it was multiple people being reduced to an hour's work in production. And once you have that kind of freedom, it unlocks all kinds of focus on resource, where you're going to put those people, all those kind of things can be a completely different kind of conversation.
All right, so I want to address the elephant in the room. I'm trying to anticipate the fear that people have of automation today. When readers open the paper, the physical product, does it still feel like it's crafted by an editorial team, or does it kind of look like a machine built it? I mean, where's your head on this? I mean, did you understand what that means? And when I say that, because there's a
Absolutely.
flavor to it, there's an ethos, right, to the each individual
Absolutely.
market.
Yeah, I mean, as a former editor myself, and sort of one of those people that once upon a time would have sat there designing pages and putting your whole heart and soul into making something look beautiful and presented beautifully and thinking about the relationship with the reader, it's something that we are inherently cynical about. And it's really important that that quality is maintained. And winning over editors with that can only be done if you have the right kind of product. And in this process, it's not just a repeated templated shape, repeated endlessly throughout a book multiple times. It produces all types of different shapes and presentations that we had in the past. So it can be a single page, double page spreads across the gutter that we use, pages with multiple pictures, multiple size stories, pages with columnists or with page furniture. All of those things can be enabled by the automation process in the way that they were done by hand in the past, just much, much quicker and more efficiently.
All right,
And
so
the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day.
and
And
I wish just
readers, uh,
go ahead.
I mean, like I say, we've produced, and it's in the region of about 3,000 pages every week at this level, um, and no reader, once the title's moved from templated or hand production to automation, no reader has ever noticed or complained or written in and said, "What's happened to my newspaper? It's not what I expected. It's not something funny about it." Nobody has ever noticed the difference, and that's the ultimate test, I think.
Chris, Chris, I'm bringing you in for a second to ask you a question. When people present these concerns to you, when you're doing your, discovery moment with a new potential customer of ATEX's, do you send them copies of this? Are you able to show them when they say they have fears of losing that? If they're doing multiple titles in multiple markets, do you have a way of reassuring people that it's even though the automation creates efficiency, the products still maintain their identity?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we certainly have examples of customers, like Tim's former operation and others, where we're able to share what those pages look like. And as Tim says, I mean, the proof is in the pudding there. And the other thing about print automation, and I think that one of the reassuring things for folks is that. Automation is one piece of the system. However, there's always the ability to go in and edit yourself. You're not stuck with the automation. So you do have that control. Of course, we don't, and the idea is to not have folks going into InDesign and doing these things, but it does exist if you do need it.
All
So I
right,
think that's
I wanted to address that because I know we hear that all the time, that fear whenever you turn to
yeah.
automation. So let me stay with Tim though. Tim, I want to unpack the situation. You've given us reassurance. Thank you. Because we know people come to the product for the journalism. for the mission, and that's it. All starts there. And by the way, if I can editorialize, every time I get on a stage, every time someone calls me and says, Mike, you're doing all this reporting, you're picking all this stuff up. What's the secret sauce to sustainability? And it's not automation. It's a good story. You have that editorial. You agree. It starts with the news,
Totally.
the story, and then how you craft that, and then it gets into distribution and all these things. This is the create efficiency for the journalism. So let me address the next elephant in the room we hear about. That's staff concerns. I mean, everybody's scared, of course, of, people losing jobs. One question publishers always ask us about people. When production becomes automated, what happens to the staff to spend their days building those pages? Can you address that? I hope I'm not putting you on the spot there, sir.
No, of course. I mean, every publisher's answer to that will be different based on the pressures they have. Where we were, we repurposed those people. There weren't mass layoffs as a result of the automation. What we needed was more resource on content creation. And the people that were doing the burden of manual production were often people that had started in the industry as journalists, but they'd moved away from creating content to effectively moving boxes around a page, doing manual tasks, which have been replaced by an automated process. And it's to see those people come back into the business and create content is a really positive thing. Now, not every publisher will choose to do that. That will be their own decision. And obviously, all news kind of organizations have seen a reduction of people over time for all sorts of reasons. I can't say this will be the ultimate answer that will stave that off, but it gives you the option to repurpose things. So, people are right to be fearful and cynical, but I don't think it's a necessary causal link between the technology and what happens to people in the long run. This is an enabler which should give publishers more freedom to be completely focused on excellent content.
All right, so let's get into the solution now, if we may. I'm going to turn the corner. By the way, we're a third through our journey, 1/3. If you have any questions, if you have comments, because I wanted to first, set the stage with Tim. Now I want to get into the solution. But if we're missing something, please, and I'm not keeping my eye on the chat as well as I should. I'll get in there when I can, but I'm trying to manage all this. So please use that chat room, speak out. Let's have a dialogue in there. So I'm going to switch to Stuart now. Stuart, you've been patiently sitting there on the sidelines, but this is your job. Help me understand. I'm not a nerd. I'm a publisher. I'm not an engineer. Walk us through the system. What does it do? From the moment the editor selects the stories to the moment pages go to press. Talk me through what this thing does, if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, first things first, it doesn't do anything that you guys, publishers haven't been doing for years and years and years. And what I mean by that is, to Tim's point, the content exists, and typically that content has been published digitally in the first case. That's not a prerequisite, but that's the world that we live in nowadays. That content then enters the system. It enters the ATEX system. Now, we have tools in place to make sure that that content is nice and clean and well formed. But, that also requires can require some effort from the publisher's point of view. But that's what publishers do. They create content and they make sure that it's well formed. It then comes into our system. And we're looking to then use, the tools at our disposal that we put to people's disposal, rather, to produce their pages in an automated way. So what do? They have a news list, which the screenshot you're seeing on the screen at the moment, the bottom half of that is what we call the news list. That's what every editorial planning meeting has. Within that list, there'll be certain content that has to go in a certain position in the newspaper. So the lead news, the lead sport, the lead features, you're going to say where they go. And then that might be it. That might be all you do. And certainly in the case of our users, that tends to be the limit of what they do in the editorial planning meeting in the news list. And then they select the pages and they ask the system to fill in the pages for them. So it will place those things that you said have to go in certain positions in those positions, and it will place the other content around that content. But it's not just placing the content, that's easy. it's also making sure the content fits. And that's what print automation has to bring to the party. Because what we're trying to do is to avoid people having to sub-edit or people having to open up the page. So it places the content and it makes it fit. But it does all of this under the guidance and the rules that you as the publisher establish. Okay, so this isn't a free-for-all. This isn't looking to create some, some weird and wonderful and wacky looking page. Again, to Tim's point, this needs to look like the type of publication that your house produces. So we ensure that with a set of rules that the customer decides upon when we're building the pages.
Tim, I can see your face. You're nodding your head here with Stuart. So you concur when you this is the magic, the secret behind everything, correct? This is giving you the control and the comfort you're looking for, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the pages are there are pages that looked exactly the same as they did before automation. They've just not been created by a template or by a hand-drawn page. So
amazing.
It's to the specification of the publisher.
All right, so I got to ask this now, and no one resent me, but I'm asking the hard question. All right, is AI actually laying out these pages, or is something else happening under the hood here? I mean, how much of this is those two letters, AI? Stuart, let me stay with you because you're the engineer behind the process.
Yeah. So we use AI across all of our products at ATEX, and no prizes for guessing that. And we'll use AI to prepare content and make sure that it's well read. But the actual nuts and bolts of laying down content onto a print page is rules based, and in our opinion right now it has to be, because we keep coming back to this requirement for it to look like a newspaper that the publishing house wants and needs to deliver to its clients. So the rules, let's just dig into what those rules are. The rules determine how the page is laid out. The rules determine the typography. The rules determine what we do or what we're allowed to do in terms of making content fit on the page. And the combination of those three allows you to then build your pages automatically. So AI would and could massage the content to make sure that the content is in a good form, a well-formed piece of content. But then the rules are the things that we use to build the pages and lay out content on those pages.
So basically, we're talking about tools that assist editors, right?
Yes.
Or something more autonomous. I mean, again, treat me like I'm an infant here, okay? Because I'm not the engineer here. I'm someone who's just looking at the brand, the content, getting the distribution out as efficiently as possible, as cost effectively as possible, as I can move anything in my cash flow back into editorial. So where does AI enter this picture, if at all? Are we talking about tools that assist editors or something more autonomous, sir? Please address that.
No, I think you're describing it, well, you are describing it perfectly, Mike. The AI component in this is a tool that assists the editor. So it's going to do things like suggest on the digital side an SEO title, an SEO description, maybe do some smart tagging, maybe paraphrasing, maybe rewriting, certain elements of an article because they're not written in such a way that they would work well on the web. But then you move that forward and you go back to the point that I made earlier about well-formed content. You could also employ AI tools to take digital content and rewrite it for print. And that's something that we have tools under development to do. The classic being, if you look at a headline in if you look at a headline in digital, it's written with an SEO focus, and that doesn't always work in print. And it's often quite large, quite big in terms of content, which makes it so that it doesn't work in print as well. So AI tools can be used for that. And you saw the list that was popped up on screen there. Those AI tools, pervade through ATEX's editorial offering and advertising offering and circulation offerings. But we do have, some exciting options on our roadmap that we're underway in terms of developing, which you'll see in the weeks and months ahead. We'll be talking about some of those at the mega conference next week. But that's where AI fits into this solution today.
Okay, you just hit something that I preach. Ever since I became a publisher, I started as a nerd. I don't want to bore the audience, but I was the guy that put one of the first newspapers online. And the NAA said I was a digital pioneer. Before I knew it, I started a consulting firm teaching newspapers all over the world what the internet was, if you get my drift. But now I'm a publisher. And for the last 6 years, I have been with that background. I have realized that headlines, as you just said, are completely different for print. I mean, when someone flips through the pages of my magazine, which you want to get their attention around that image is completely different than when I'm putting on a web page or an email where I have a headline and a lead. A lead is not even appearing in the print product. So let's get into this. Digital headlines today are written for search engines and algorithms. They're very keyword heavy. They're long, but print headlines need to be tight, punchy. They got to fit to the page. It's like a whole different ball game. So I absolutely see how a tool helping editors bridge that gap would be useful. So I'm going to go to Chris now, I think. Chris, here's the objection I hear from publishers all the time. They assume adopting something like this means ripping out their CMS, their workflow, their entire tech stack, because they got that all in place, right, to deal with all this. Can you give us a little, how does this get into their existing environment where they can find that efficiency as they're building those pages, but still maintain the system they have in place now to produce that perfect, incredible product that, I'm not going to say that gets clicks and shares. I'm going to say that creates the engagement we so desperately need in our digital products.
Yeah, I think that's one of the you know unique factors about print automation, about ATEX print automation, is that it will work right alongside of your existing CMS. So you don't have to rip everything out. You don't have to go through a long and lengthy migration. The barrier to entry is actually is quite low, and it's a lot less than many people realize. Because you're right. I mean, when you talk about doing a project like that, that's a different conversation. So yeah.
All right. So let me ask the other big question. I am now a public, and by the way, a lot of these questions were asked, those that registered for this webinar. So we asked you any questions you want us to know in advance. I'm going to bring some up in a little bit. And we're going to address, there's a lot going on in the chat now, but people are not following my rooms. They're chatting directly with the panelists. So very few of you are doing that. That's okay. We're seeing it. We're going to address it. But okay, so here's a lot of people. I'm going to be a publisher now and ask you, I use WordPress, or I use Blocks, or I use another CMS right now. Can this sit alongside that easily and simply, or am I rethinking my content management system digitally right now, Chris?
Nope, it'll sit right alongside it. We have folks using WordPress, Blocks, any number of content management systems. But we'll sit right alongside that, and generally, it's just a feed of content from those systems that we ingest, and we do the same thing for advertising. Somebody asked about that in the questions. Advertising is advertising slots are imported onto the pages based on your ad system export. So we will do that first.
Who's this built for? I mean, every technology sounds great until you ask whether the economics make sense for who I am, my size, my scale,
Yep.
my amount of titles, my amount of physical pages.
Yep.
Who is this built for? Let's talk scale, Chris. Answer my
Yep.
question.
Yep. Important, very important question. I mean, when the math starts to make sense is when folks are producing 1,500 pages. They're around 1,500 pages a month. When it's less than that, the math doesn't work out as well, and the ROI doesn't work out as well. But when you get over that number, the conversation gets very interesting very quickly. And then we do have optimization solutions for the weekly publisher who's producing one title. It's a different conversation, a little bit different than what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we can have another webinar on that. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
exactly. We could.
ATEX is a huge operation, international. I mean, it's mind-boggling how many things you guys produce and how many ways you help journalism be sustainable around the world.
52 years in business, over 250 employees, and global company. So we're working with publishers of different sizes all around the world.
Yeah, and I hope those that attended still feel we're meeting your needs. But yeah, we're discussing a specific form of automation now to help someone who's doing, as you said. So the magic sweet spot you just said is maybe 1,500 pages a month. I have that correct, sir? That's what we're discussing for this product and this automation, right, Chris?
Well, that's correct. Yeah. What we're talking about today is more for the folks who are producing, volumes of pages. For the smaller, weekly, Travis, I see had a question, 16 pages per issue a week. We can talk about that offline. I would say this probably isn't the right forum for that, but yeah, I can reach out to you on
As you
those.
should. Yeah. I think everybody who's attending deserves to have their questions answered. All right. So let's be clear about everyone listening. We're not talking about something still in development, right? We hear that sometimes too. We actually, we're very careful about who we not let, but when we have someone who wants to use us to market a product that hasn't quite been built yet. Remember those days, Chris, we used to call that vaporware. I mean, when people were trying to,
Yeah.
they were trying to pick up a customer to help finance the development of something. But I think you just answered that question. ATEX is huge. This is working now. If someone brings us on board, you're not customizing that. This is easily implemented. Do I have that correct, sir?
Yeah, that's right. And the point about that is that it's already in production. We're already doing it, and the platform that print automation is built upon is ATEX's print platform that has been around for many years, many years. And the automation part of that is a natural progression of that. And I'll use Stuart's word again, battle tested, because that's what the system is. It's heavily battle tested over the years. So automation is just an advancement of that mature product.
Tim, I'm going to give you a little background for this question. I'm going to bring you back in, Tim, if you don't mind. The final question will be, I want you to talk to our audience of publishers. Keep in mind, and that goes well beyond, Tim, this audience, because this will be turned into a case study. The recording of this will be living online forever and optimizing. So, but stay with me on this. I am on the board of directors of the International Newspaper Group. I don't know what a lithoplate is. I come from the ad side. I have no idea how my magazine is printed. And whenever I have these conversations with the people who print it, I don't understand what they say to me. You understand? But I'm the publisher. And the reason I'm on the board is because we do an Operations All-Star salute. I like to support the operation industry. So now there are a lot of publishers who are going to watch this and then talk to their people internally. And I hope this doesn't sound snarky, who may try to convince them they don't want to do this because they fear for the switch. Am I making sense, Tim? What advice do you give to a U.S. publisher who may be like me? They know they're paying people to lay out a lot of pages right now. And they know they're doing it this way. And they're being told this is the only way to do it. Do you know where I'm heading with this, right, Tim?
Absolutely, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
talk to that publisher one-on-one right now and give them some advice. As someone, and I love your background. You come from the editorial side, the publishing side, and then you got into this operational world. Go ahead, sir.
So, yeah, I think one of the big things here is persuading editors who have total ownership of their products and their audience relationship that this is a thing that is going to make life better, faster, easier, cheaper, obviously, and it's not something that will detract from the quality. That's the absolute crucial point. And in some ways, it might even improve the quality of the presentation of the print product. And we saw that when we introduced properly designed templates and the process that followed. So speed is not necessarily about diminishing the quality. It can have the opposite effect on products. And that's really important. And obviously, people will be skeptical about technological improvements and changes, but these never sleep. This stuff never isn't going to go away. Your competitors may be doing this and achieving a competitive advantage over you in terms of your operating costs. If you don't do it, it's something that, I'm old enough to have lived through the arrival of desktop publishing years ago, and all of the changes in production processes, computer to play, all of the things that we went through that, kind of reduce the burden of production and the cost of it. And, we embrace those things because it's done right. It's a way of enhancing your products, enhancing the relationship you have, and the time that you have available to concentrate on great content. And one could easily focus on the negative aspects of this, but if it has to be approached with a spirit of optimism, really, in order to benefit from it. And I would say to any kind of publisher that this is really worth a serious look, because it's about gain, and it's a gain in time and resource. And from what my friends here at ATEX have been describing, the actual barrier to entering this world is quite low. It's not something that you have to be a huge operation to do and to gain the benefit from. So I'm entirely positive about it, because like any other technological innovation, once embraced, it can make your life easier and better.
All right, now, Chris, you've been nodding your head for what Tim's saying. So I'm going to address you with this question. What do you say to the publisher that says, I don't care about automation, I'm just trying to keep the lights on? I mean, I want to keep these titles alive. I mean, again, I sometimes describe this amazing industry of ours, which I am honored to be part of and being a champion for, that I always say, getting this industry to move sometimes, it reminds me of the old joke, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is one, but the light bulb has to want to change in the first place. I don't know if that resonates well or not, but that's sometimes, because remember, okay, I'm going to bore you again, Chris, but my breakout role, and I discussed this, was because, I was, NAA was honoring me, and I was, consulting, was I was asked to help a company aggregate our classifieds in 1999 called Ad One. That's how old I am. And I was going to different publications. This is when Billy Morris was president of the Newspaper Association of America. And there was no Craigslist. You understand? There was no cars.com. And I was trying to get us all to aggregate classifieds into one common national platform. And it was like herding cats. This is an industry that changes slowly. So I'm hearing more publishers. Don't talk to me about automation. Chris, this is your final pitch, not for ATEX, but for change. What do you say, sir?
Yeah, I say that in my conversations with publishers over the last 6 months to a year, this is a topic that is rapidly gaining interest. It's escalating, and I think many of the publishers out there are on board. But to Tim's point, I think it's really about getting the entire team on board. And embracing the technology, as you say, and Mike, you're right. So, it's not always the first thing that this industry has done over the years. However, with AI and the technologies that we're seeing out there right now, I feel like we may have turned that corner. Just based on the number of conversations I'm having, the number of demos we're running, the number of installs. We have a U.S. publisher who's going to be implementing print automation for their daily titles, starting soon, this spring actually, and hope to be live in the fall. So I feel like that there is some truth to what you say there, but I also feel like maybe some of those barriers are breaking down a little bit, because the math is undeniable. I mean, when you're talking about 70 titles being produced by 6 people, that's hard to not take a look at.
All right, so I'm going to address some of the questions now, if I may. And again, load them into chat, and I'm going to get to some that if people did prior to our start. But Stuart, this one was for you. Your screenshot. Remember when we showed all the when you showed the screenshot of the back end. This person is asking. It looks like that you're just showing tab pages. Does this work with broadsheet pages or pages without consistent or standard ad stacks? I mean, how fluid is this, Stuart?
Yeah, it works with any type of page. It's not designed just for one tabloid that's based in the UK. It's a generic product that has a global appeal. I think Chris mentioned about the ads being placed automatically. The whole page is built automatically. The ads, the folios, any standing artwork, barcodes, etc., etc. And in truth, ATEX have done that for years. The final part is the automatic placement of the actual content. But yeah, there's no barrier on the system to it only works with this type of content or this type of page design versus this. I also saw, just whilst I've got the floor, I also saw a message in the chat about, will this follow the design templates of an existing newspaper? Absolutely, it will. That's part of the rules process and part of the setup. And we're not looking to change what you're producing in terms of style. We're looking to automate what you're producing. That's all. But the style will remain the same by and large.
I think this was your slide again. There was a slide someone's asking where you talked about reducing third-party involvement. Was that your slide? And someone says they didn't quite grasp what you meant by that. Can you address that, Chris? Stuart, I'm sorry. Was that your slide, Stuart? You didn't have something that said reducing third-party involvement?
Quite possibly. I mean, I can answer that. There are third-party costs within any publishing system, and if you're reducing the number of people needed to drive that system, then by definition you'll reduce the amount of third-party costs that system then has. And that might not be significant in certain situations, but believe you me, there are those situations where that is a consideration that people have, and they're very mindful of how they can reduce that. So by definition, you're going to do that if you become more efficient and if you have fewer people driving the system. And it is something that when we've been making presentations, people have come back to us and asked about how many third-party licenses do I need to drive this? So, there is an impact and there is a benefit for sure.
Again, I don't understand this question, and I'm not sure, but I have to ask it. Does it follow the template of mainline newspaper? We're a daily newspaper in the UAE. Welcome. It's so honored to have you. Will we need it to the similar to our current design? Do you understand that question, Stuart?
Yeah, I do. And that was my point. I did pick up that in the chat.
Okay.
We're going to follow the design that you currently have in place. Full stop. On from that, we will automate the content that goes into that design. We're not asking you to change the look and feel. We will place content into that design automatically.
We have Clarice from USA Today. I love what Clarice, thank you. And you did it to everyone. As News Operations Manager for the Design Center at USA Today Network, welcome anything that can make the process for page production more efficient. She's just pushing us ahead. Thank you. An honor to have you here. Also, Clarice says, e-newspapers are the growing trend. Are you able to create publications that work better with those vendors besides just direct publications of the print editions? I agree, because our our e-magazine's on fire. I mean, that's what a lot of people read us, flipping on their tablets. Whoever, is that again you, Stuart, addressing that question?
Yeah, I mean, without downplaying it completely, for us, that's an integration point on the output. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about ingesting content, making sure it's good, building pages automatically, et cetera, The e-paper integration with our system is about delivering a package of information to the e-paper solution, be it one from ATEX or from a third party, to enable that to then, present it in the appropriate format. But absolutely, we have integration with e-paper solutions, and we have a really good understanding of what happens on a page. So it's not, when we talk about e-paper integration, we're not just throwing out a PDF. Anybody can do that. What we're throwing out is a package of information that describes the layout of the page. Yes, it delivers a PDF. Yes, it delivers a thumbnail. It also delivers all the content in the requisite form, all the associated media in the requisite form, and it will package that and deliver that to the right location automatically on a status change, typically in the system.
Someone is asking if this will eliminate InDesign. I'm assuming they're wondering if it eliminates their licensing fees and their costs. Do you need InDesign once you go with ATEX? Do you still need that type of
Well,
software in your role?
we support InDesign, and we also, as most people know, ATEX have their own pagination system, which we built ourselves. So it's a religious thing. If you want to go forward with us and InDesign, that's absolutely fine. If you want to go forward with ATEX and our own proprietary pagination, that's absolutely fine as well.
All right, so let's get to what we had. I'm going to just spend 5 more minutes on this, with your permission, Chris. And this one I think is to you. Chris, how much setup time is, this came from people who registered before the webinar. How much setup time does it require for templates? How easy to modify when the fly doing layout? Chris, you want to handle that one?
Well, the setup, there is some setup. I think that's really the biggest part of this is, getting things set up. In terms of time, I don't know if I can really put a time on it because it's a little bit of a moving target there. If it's just one one title versus 70 titles or things of that nature. But a typical installation, for one title and how much setup time you would need, I think we devote a couple of weeks to that as part of the setup process or the training process.
All right. I'm going to fly through these. Oh, this is interesting. Which automation tools are you being used? How do you account for plagiarism using AI an issue to originate original content? This is from Carla. Do you think you can dissect that one?
Well, I think that's more probably, if you're talking plagiarized material, that's probably more about, AI and content creation, I would
Sure.
think. This isn't creating content. This is simply taking your content that's already been created and putting it in a design format on your page. So yeah, there wouldn't be any issues around that.
We'll make this our last one before we get to our final information. What are the critical pieces of information and management objectives that publishers need to share with their staff and vendors to achieve success? I think bullet it out. Give us that final elevator pitch, Chris.
What was the question? I think maybe Tim would have a better.
All right, Tim, what are the critical pieces of information and management objectives that publishers need to share with their staff? I kind of asked you this earlier in order to move forward with automating the print process.
Well, that's an interesting question.
It's loaded, yes.
It's this is a process, and use a cliched phrase. It is something of a journey from a one way of doing things to another, and that obviously that change management process is obviously critical in this, as it would be for any transformational process. In terms of the critical pieces of information, I think sharing the goals and the kind of ambitions for what this can do is probably the starting point. As I said earlier, maintaining the absolute quality and the trusted journalism that we all think are the kind of core aspects of our publishing world is absolutely critical to this. So none of what we've described today compromises that, and I think that's something that should be shared with staff. In fact, having more resource available, more time, is something that enhances that offering. So it's a really big subject, that question. We could talk about that for an entire webinar, I think, but that's the starting point, is sharing the mission and the aims and objectives and being honest about that, because everybody understands the pressures that are behind newspaper publishing.
All right, well, I'm going to date stamp our webinar now, although these get watched years later, Chris and Stuart. But you guys are going to be at a conference that I'll be at, starting. I'll be there Monday. I don't know when you guys are arriving. You're willing. I mean, if anyone who is watching us currently or watches the recording before Monday, you have a special place where they can go to set up an appointment with you guys at Mega in Austin. This is for those who don't know what we're discussing, America's Newspapers, E&P, the News Media Alliance, all put on a conference called the Mega Conference. It'll be in Austin, Texas, starting this weekend. I gave you a vanity email URL for your booking page. I hope you don't mind, Stuart. We use enp.press/ATEX. You can go there right now and ask for an appointment, or you can scan that QR code. Chris, anything else you want to add about what you're doing at Mega?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to be having conversations with folks on print automation. I mean, that's really the goal, and we're going to be doing some demos while we're there. Stuart is joining us from the UK, which is fantastic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in the chat, and of course, there's the QR code here, but I'm going to pop in the chat our calendar. If you'll be at Mega, feel free to book a time with Stuart and I. I'll put a link to our calendar in the chat. And then if you won't be at Mega and you still want to have a separate conversation or a demo on print automation, I'm going to put a link in for that too. So those are in the chat, and we'd be happy to go into more detail.
Final note from the host here, or the MC, whatever the hell you want to call me. We're going to have a recording of this webinar available, hopefully by end of business today, with a write-up of the content, as well as the slides that we were flashing on your small screen. So we urge you to look for that in your inbox later today. You'll get an email from me personally, so you can share it with other team members and maybe spread around the word. I want to thank Tim from over in the UK for giving us your story. Success to you, sir, now that you've hung a shingle to share your knowledge to the rest of the world on an amazing background. I want to thank Stuart for coming. Stuart, you're going to be hopping a plane soon. My apologies for the mess ups in the U.S. airports right now. Hopefully that'll be solved before Friday. Have you been watching the news, Stuart, and you see the long lines?
I'm preparing for a long wait to get through security. Yes.
I am so. And I don't know where you're clearing customs, but you're going to have to go all the way back through wherever you land. And I don't think it's in Austin, sir. I don't know where you're.
No, I am landing in Austin. So yeah.
Oh, direct? You can get direct to Austin from the UK? I'm impressed.
I can.
Oh,
yeah.
Hallelujah. It'll be easy there. I promise you. I mean, compared to obviously New York City.
I'm going to hold you to that, Mike.
Or compared to Atlanta, New York, or wherever else. So that'll be a much easier customs entrance. Chris, you're not flying from the UK. You're still going to have to deal with lines, I'm sure. But we'll see you soon you're coming from Detroit, right?
Yeah, Michigan. So should be no problem. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank our audience for attending as well. My name is Mike Blinder. Again, thank you for participating and have a wonderful day. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.